This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. This is going to be one of those videos, and I need to say this not to my audience, but specifically to YouTube and Meghan Markle. Please note, this video contains speech protected under the U.S. Constitution. I declare I am exercising my First Amendment under the U.S. Bill of Rights. Any attempt to censor and or suppress could be in violation of the law. Section 230 may not be applicable if found exercising bad faith regarding biased content moderation. In light of everything that has come out since Elon Musk had bought Twitter, releasing files that showed collusion between the US government and social media tech platform in censoring American free speech, particularly around elections and the COVID vaccine. Other topics had been included, and we'll get to that in a second. But what happened after triggering off that resulted in the Facebook files and then the YouTube files. What was revealed in these congressional hearings was this massive global censorship industrial complex, a complex that Meghan and Harry have been tightly aligned with, working with organizations not only here in the US, but also with the UK, and in large part funded by the US taxpayer. Now, for those that want to learn a little bit more or want a refresher, here is a playlist that I've created going over in detail Harry and Meghan's involvement with the various individuals in this censorship industrial complex. I also go over extensively how Meghan and Harry weaponize the media and abuse their power and status in order to suppress people's online free speech. Before the Twitter files exposed that social media companies were working with third parties and the government to remove content of views, perspectives, and opinions that did not align with the ideologies and propaganda that had been forced onto the public. And this wasn't just the US government. This was also the UK government, the Australian government, Brazil, Canada. All of them were forcing this global censorship to prevent various truths from coming out. One of those truths that definitely was suppressed was questioning the legitimacy of Meghan's pregnancy. In 2019, the people who worked for Meghan and Harry at the palace had been responsible for a lot of this content moderation that we started to see. First, it began on Quora and Tumblr, where people were deplatformed, content was removed for so-called violations. Then we saw this censorship really ramp up, beginning of January 2021, all the way into early 2023, right before the Twitter files exposed that there was collusion going on behind the scenes to suppress certain topics that didn't align with the agenda being pushed, or in Harry and Meghan's case, for brand management, otherwise known as taking down people who were calling out their lies. In all these takedowns and deplatforming, what was consistent in the excuse that they were using to justify silencing people was harassment and bullying, when in reality, we were the ones who had been threatened, doxxed, terrorized, harassed, bullied, to the point where essentially their voice had been taken away because they were no longer allowed to be part of a platform or community. As a result of being exposed for what they've been doing, their tactics now have shifted, and what we're seeing are various ways that they're trying to hinder and deter people from either sharing news or monetizing news or just talking about the truth. These groups and people, along with the governments, all want to put mechanisms in place in order to detract you from the so-called wrong think. You would think as a result of being exposed on this level, these people would stop. But the censorship industrial complex strikes again. The Duchess of Narsussex did an excellent video a day ago, as you see here, showing an analysis of how this group of Megxit accounts are being suppressed. And she does provide evidence of other channels that sort of slip through the cracks to where we see numbers being vastly different. I strongly recommend that you check this video out in full. I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights. And that's because it complements the work that I have been doing over the last 2.5, 3 years, focusing and showing everyone how Harry and Meghan have been interfering with our government and undermining our Constitution, particularly the First Amendment.
It's that time again. It's time to have yet another conversation about the collusion, the conspiracy to injure, the harassment, the stalking, the suppressing, and everything else of YouTubers that talk about this woman, Meghan Markle. So there's no real pattern there on how we're being messed with because it's just slightly different. But there is a common thread, and that common thread is her and her douchebag husband, Prick Harry. All of the YouTubers that have problems were around before the Twitter investigation started by Bot Sentinel and or started therefore after. But all of the Twitter channels that or the YouTube channels that are being messed with have been around for a long time. They know us. We know them. So Christopher Boozy had tweeted in April of 2022, now that YouTube has deranked anti-Meghan channels from search results and recommendations, their ad revenue will plummet like the ruble. Hate accounts are about to go through some things. Now, at the time when this happened, we all talked about this, and they viewers and everybody was like, "Well, it hasn't happened. We can still find your stuff. We can find your stuff." Well, I believe it was a slow implementation, and I'll explain that later. But that didn't happen right away. But it's definitely happened now. And there have been many conversations about this. I just took 3 screenshots. Christopher Boozy, 422. YouTube could have saved themselves a lot of bad press and embarrassment if they had deranked and demonetized the anti-Meghan channels months ago. Now things are going to get a bit uncomfortable and unpleasant for advertisers whose ads are shown during these anti-Meghan videos. So this was all in the news, like Newsweek, Jack Royston, and Ellie Hall, they were all reporting on this. So they were putting a lot of pressure. So that was a tactic. And it's all about demonetization because they have a hard time getting people off. So they figure if they demonetize people, then they'll just quit. Christopher Boozy, good morning and happy Easter to everyone except the hate channels that were deranked by YouTube. Now, so whether this is they were able to do this or not, the intent was there. The desire is there to get us deplatformed. All of the YouTubers that I speak to, and even the ones that I don't, I look at all of their numbers just to see, what's going on. So I've only got, my channel is the size that it is. Every once in a while I might get a lucky 59,000 one that's like, a big one for me. But I've been around and I've been a target. I've been in their video. They know me. I know them. Okay. But, like I said, and then there have been some newer channels that have been added that have surpassed me, that have only been around for like 9 months. They have surpassed me in subscribers. They have a high subscriber amount, but they get less views than I do. No clear pattern, one common thread. But now there's a chink in the armor. It's starting to smell really bad around here. So the Royal Grift has had good luck. Her channel took off very quickly and did very well. And then she has come to a complete is completely stagnant with subscribers. When she hit 100,000, she hit 100,000 subscribers, I think maybe 10 months ago.
I'm going to interject for a second. The Duchess of Narsussex is definitely onto something here. Each one of our channels is very different, but the same. The common thread, yes, is Meghan and Harry. The question is, what are the factors that go into why a video is seen, why it's getting recommended? And that's the thing that I have been struggling with over the last month, since I, as well, as you see, I have not been growing at the pace that I was growing at before. The question becomes why? Now, there are a lot of variables that go into content creators being successful on this platform. It involves the type of content you create, how engaging, entertainment, how long we can keep your attention for, and also the topics. Are they interesting or not? When I look at my channel and see the growth that I've had, I factor in a couple things. One, are people interested in this content that I'm bringing here? Also, there's this element of competition. Back in 2021, when I started, there were maybe a handful of channels that talked about these lies and exposing Meghan and Harry. Majority of them were from the United Kingdom or elsewhere. But as time went on, people started to see the controversy and the chaos that Meghan Markle and her husband were bringing, not only to the royal family, but on a global stage. So it was hard not to notice and not to talk about. As a result, we see this explosion of channels that are now talking about this couple. People's attention can only take so much of Meghan Markle, so part of this is also being entertaining. And if you're bored with what's being said or what's being presented, then the likelihood of you staying and watching till the end is probably slim. That also factors into how our videos get recommended. There's also the element of not being able to control what our viewers do. You know, our viewers can love us all day long, but if they're not subscribed or if they don't hit the like button or if they don't share, then however the algorithm works will determine if it's done objectively, decide how much visibility or reach my channel and videos will have. And that I think is pretty much standard across the board if we were living in a fair world. But because we have this mess with Meghan and Harry, there also could be things written into the algorithm that have a list of us to prevent our reach from getting further out there, which I agree with Duchess of Narsussex. I do think that there's something going on being manipulated behind the scenes based off of the growth that I have seen over the last couple of years, year over year, and then seeing what's going on in 2024, there's too much of a drop in order to say that, oh, yeah, my content really just sucks and people don't like it. I don't think I've changed, or at least I think I'm bringing something a little bit different, unless people are just not interested in some of the things that I have to say. I mean, that very well could be a possibility. But all of a sudden to have such a hard drop in the first half of 2024, I do agree with Duchess of Narsussex. They are messing with a list of us.
HG Tutor. HG Tutor has 218,000 subscribers, and HG has talked about that he knows. I can't remember if he says he believes he's being shadow banned or he knows it, but he knows it. I mean, everybody knows it. You know, somebody in a coma would know it. So with 218,000 subscribers, and he also appeals to a different audience because of people just wanting to learn about narcissism. Let's go. 2,000 views. The Catherine, that's going to be a big one because Catherine's in the news. 1,000 views, 9,000, 13,000, 15,000, 9. And he has over 200,000 subscribers. J-Lo's a big celebrity. Why is he only getting 11,000 views? HG hasn't gotten a 200,000, 3,000 lucky video or a 1.6 million video. But they allow HG to have a high subscriber count. They don't allow HG to have high views. According to Taz, does very well, has been around for a long time. Obviously does great. She's got 185,000 subscribers. Now, Taz does well with her views, relatively speaking. I mean, clearly they should be in the millions or the hundreds of thousands. You know what I'm saying? Based on how the real algorithm works with the smaller channels. That's how it should work. Taz, she got lucky with a 348,000 thing. She got lucky. But Taz does well. Hers is consistent, but it's still within her subscriber count, and she rarely crosses the threshold. So like I said, short of having internal communications from maybe rogue employees at YouTube, could be at YouTube, or rogue employees, I don't know. But short of having internal communications at YouTube and or Meghan's phone and laptop, this is the most definitive evidence when you put it together with all of the evidence. These people can go out and brag, we're going to do this to them, we're going to do this to them. Well, there's no way to prove it. They are saying it, but there's no way to prove that. And again, the lack of patterns, similar but different.
It is a possibility that Meghan and Harry have someone at Google who is suppressing or affecting our channels so that they don't have visibility and they don't have reach. Prince Harry had direct access to the head of policy that was working with the US government while they were doing all this censorship stuff. So why wouldn't he talk to his buddy and say, hey, here's a list of YouTube accounts. Can you please have them shadow banned or have them suppressed so they still have so-called free speech, but not, as Elon would say, free reach? For more information about the YouTube files, please see the video that I did about a month ago talking about this topic. Now, I posed this question to my audience. This video last month only got 29,000 views. My question is, was this a video that was interesting in topic, or was this a video that just wasn't recommended? It always helps to hear on what you're seeing on your side, as well as what could be better. So definitely let me know in the comment section below. But getting back to it, it's now coming out that it wasn't just the election, as well as vaccines that were being censored. It was also other topics and issues. Yesterday, House Representative Jim Jordan sends an email to Google's lawyer reminding them that they have a subpoena obligation to turn over documents and information regarding their engagement with the government in censoring and suppressing people's free speech. What this letter shows is that it wasn't just about the election or suppressing information on vaccine hesitancy or injuries. It's now including suppressing certain Second Amendment related content. The important thing that you need to know here is that the Meghan and Harrys are behind the scenes trying to force these social media platforms to be changing their policies. As I had said at the very beginning of this video, many of us had been demonetized, deplatformed as a result of the excuse of harassment and bullying due to a person with intrinsic features. Intrinsic features, folks. This is what they were using to pull videos down if you dared talk about Meghan Markle and this wobbling baby bump. Just to show you, before this censorship industrial complex got underway, this is what the harassment and cyberbullying policy looked like on YouTube. As a result of the influence from this censorship industrial complex, this is what the harassment and cyberbullying policy looked like at the end of 2019. And to go a step further, the examples that were given from 2019 to 2024 has expanded. And what we all saw happen was that these little policies that were inserted there gave blanket or cover to justify taking down content that did not violate YouTube's content moderation policies. Like, for example, calling out Meghan's bad behavior, and they would get demonetized because it would be classified under harassment and bullying because she's a Black woman and we're also racist. This was an example that Meghan wanted hidden, where she was so rude walking in there and didn't even say hello to the woman on her right. She just looked her up and down. Like, get over yourself, Meghan. She didn't want this clip hanging around, but now I'm bringing it back. Stick with me to the end of this video. There's more from this particular visit with SmartWorks that I want to show you and point out. It's evident that these control freaks are not going to stop, and they're going to find alternate routes in order to clamp down on free speech. One of those routes, obviously, we're seeing more and more of, is the route of targeting the children. Remember when Harry and Meghan did that New York mental health summit with Surgeon General Vivek Murthy? This is the same Surgeon General that is getting sued in the Missouri versus Biden, now also known as the Missouri versus Murthy, landmark lawsuit on free speech. In the event you don't know what this is about, as one, no one's really talking about it, and two, any of this information has been suppressed on various social media platforms as well as Google searches. This case is about infringement on First Amendment rights, in which it is alleged that the government colluded and or coerced social media platforms to suppress disfavored speakers, viewpoints, and content on social media platforms. You know, what was happening to the Megxit community and still ongoing today? Yes, Megs, we see you. The Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, played a major role in censoring the information surrounding COVID-19 and vaccine hesitancy. So this guy in 2021 was chastising social media platforms, threatening to hold social media platforms accountable for not censoring the so-called misinformation. Giving wonderful advice to Vivek Murthy, the Surgeon General, was Jory Craig from the Democratic National Committee, or DNC, who worked on misinformation and disinformation issues. Now, if you've been following my work on the censorship industrial complex and Meghan and Harry's involvement, then the name Jory Craig should not be new to any of you, as, remember, Meghan and Harry paid this woman $120,000 as a so-called consultant She was the one who was the lead and behind this Archwell campaign and censorship under the guise of supporting parents and keeping kids safe online. Now, I have said this several times over. As a result of the Twitter files exposing this government social media collusion and suppressing free speech, the strategy has now pivoted towards focusing on the children and using that excuse in keeping children safe as a way to backdoor into not only violating Americans' privacy, but also to censor speech or continue to keep censoring speech. I'd like to remind everyone that Jory Craig is affiliated with the Institute of Strategic Dialogue, which is based out of London, UK. Also based out of the UK is Five Rights Foundation, which is a foundation that is aligned with Archwell Fagazi Public Charity, as you can see, building the digital world that young people deserve. Again, focusing on the youth. Which now brings me to Vivek Murthy making the news yesterday in the New York Times opinion piece that he wrote. Keep in mind, this is the same New York Times that gave Meghan a platform to write the losses we share in this fabricated story about this miscarriage she had. Anyhow, it looks like he's been taking notes from Meghan Markle as he wants Congress to pass law to put warning labels on social media. Just like how Meghan wanted to put warning labels on the tabloids, the very same tabloids that Meghan gives stories to.
Well, firstly, I would urge you not to read tabloids because I don't think that's healthy for anyone. Hopefully one day they come with a warning label like cigarettes do, like this is toxic for your mental health.
We should really be paying attention to what the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, is pushing for in this op-ed he wrote. He writes, "It's time to require a Surgeon General's warning label on social media platforms, stating that social media is associated with significant mental health harms for adolescents. A Surgeon General's warning label, which requires congressional action, would regularly remind parents and adolescents that social media has not been proved safe. Evidence from tobacco studies show that warning labels can increase awareness and change behavior. When asked if a warning from the Surgeon General would prompt them to limit or monitor their children's social media use, 76% of people in one recent survey of Latino parents said yes." This is why these people need to be called out. Don't you find that this recent survey that they took of one particular demographic is kind of racist? As is right now, majority of Latinos that are coming in here are disenfranchised, have to work, have to leave their kids alone, left to their own devices, most likely being entertained by the internet. Of course, they're going to want someone to regulate it for them. This is a completely biased survey that doesn't include other demographics and populations that could possibly be saying, no, you know what? We as parents are going to do our job and regulate the internet for ourselves. It's not the government's job to raise our children. In any case, he continues to write, "To be clear, a warning label would not, on its own, make social media safe for young people. The advisory I issued a year ago about social media and young people's mental health included specific recommendations for policymakers, platforms, and the public to make social media safer for kids. Such measures, which already have strong bipartisan support, remain the priority." Now, I've said this before, the ultimate goal here is to be able to control the information that children are seeing in order to groom them and indoctrinate them into whatever regime that they're trying to force on all of us. If you haven't noticed, the Biden administration has been laser focused on our children over the last 3 years. In all three of President Biden's State of the Union addresses, he talks about children and technology, and even went as far as last May of 2023, setting up a safety task force specifically focused on kids' online health. Media outlet Political weighed in on this op-ed, and they wrote, "A theatrical hearing this spring meant to refocus Washington's attention on children and social media created a dramatic moment when Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg was forced to apologize directly to parents, but legislation designed to fix the problem has still never passed Congress." Now, we all remember that Meghan and Harry and Archwell Fagazi Public Charity had to chime in to show that they were a part of this support for the parents, because these are the same parents that worked with them on that report that Jory Craig had put out. Now you all see how this connects, right? Social media policy experts say they don't expect Congress to act on social media regulation immediately. Do I believe this will happen in short order? No, said Alex Frazier, director of the Council for Responsible Social Media at the nonprofit Issue One. But he is optimistic and said there's more momentum than ever before on kids' online safety. We just don't see bipartisan support like this on anything else right now at all. Now, I've shown this before, but in case you missed it, this Council for Responsible Social Media under this nonprofit Issue One is a part of the censorship industrial complex. And in December of 2023, Issue One's Council for Responsible Social Media decides to take it upon themselves to put out one of these impact reports, those impact reports that Meghan pays for that we've seen on various topics. In any case, the end of 2023, it just so happened, Dangerous by Design was put out on how social media companies are hurting our kids' national security and democracy and what we can do about it. The focus here, though, is predominantly on the children. But who makes up this council? Well, for starters, all the people that you see highlighted here are connected to Meghan and Harry, either through money being given and funded by the Archewell Fugazi Public Charity or Meghan's dear close friends like Tristan and Renee DeResta and Jory Craig. Those that are highlighted in blue are currently named in these lawsuits that I've been telling you about surrounding the violation of First Amendment rights on free speech. What's even more concerning, though, is the amount of former government officials that are part of this council, including ex-CIA members. Now, I have colored all the pink that are part of leaning to the left and then all in green leaning to the right. Now, there is one that I, by accident, left off for the right side. So we're looking at a total of 5 people that I count in relation to the rest of being left-leaning. Then factor in all the folks that are not former government officials like Renee DeResta, Jory Craig, CCDH, Imran Ahmed. You have Vivian Schiller, Tristan. All of them are liberal Democrats or lean to the left. So you can hardly say that this is a bipartisan group that represents both sides. Sure, they have a couple right-leaning people sprinkled in there to maybe give the appearance that they are bipartisan, but hardly bipartisan, folks, hardly. As mundane as it is, this is the kind of stuff that we need to pay attention to because it's these folks who are putting together these Fugazi reports to push in front of Congress to get laws and legislations passed. These are the same reports that are going to be used when Congress is looking at passing legislations. They're going to be referenced. They're going to have the statistics there, the Fugazi surveys that they put together. This is what has been going on. And this is how the online safety bill in the UK got passed. Tristan, Renee DeResta, Jory Craig, all of them had a hand in getting that law passed. And that's why these people need to be called out, especially if they're aligning with Meghan Markle, who's the biggest super spreader of mis and disinformation and also behind some of the worst bullying campaigns towards the royal family and others online. So, if they're going to advocate for this, then I'm sorry, I can't support it. Even though, yes, in theory, we'd like to see a safer and kinder online world, but start with your own core people who are directly contributing to it. I'm sorry, all these people lose credibility when they put stuff out there because they didn't denounce the bad behavior, but instead ignored it and supported it. They continued with the lies, they backed the lies, they promoted the lies, and that was okay. So I don't think these people who are representing, talking about keeping our kids safe, really truly mean that they want to keep the kids safe, because obviously they don't. Otherwise, they would be true to stopping online bullying and making Meghan Markle an example of it. The point that I want to make here is that even though these people have been exposed for suppressing and violating Americans' First Amendment rights with their collusion with the US government, thinking that they know best, they're now just going about it a different way, which the avenue that they're going down is really focusing on our kids, as well as some quieter methods, but it's still happening. Let me show you what is happening with Renee DeResta. So, Renee DiResta is part of the Stanford Internet Observatory, Obama darling. Well, Stanford no longer is contracting Renee DiResta or Alex Stamos for the matter, and they are allegedly dismantling this disinformation group that was actually violating Americans' First Amendment rights. But guess what they're doing? Even though, with the reduced headcount, Stanford is still going to continue their work, focusing on, you guessed it, child safety and other online harms. Most likely that will be focused around mental health. Come on, man. Does anyone really think that Stanford was ready to give up all that government grant funding? They're just going to repackage it differently and make it look like they're doing capacity building and inoculating the youth so that they're thinking the right way to better our society. Can we honestly say we believe that the work that these people are doing really is to protect the children? Especially when the very same people are backing and supporting and aligned with a woman here, Meghan Markle, who has openly, globally deceived the world on not only the lies about what happened when she was a royal, but also surrounding these births and the pregnancies. This has nothing to do with Meghan's so-called intrinsic attributes. This has everything to do with her moral rot in society by deceiving, manipulating, and exploiting others. It's simple as that. And that behavior we have the right to call out, as she is a public figure asserting herself onto the public and its domain, a domain in which we all share. So if I want to say that I see with my eyes that Meghan looks impatient and fake while she's standing there pretending to care, while she wears something that looks like a prosthetic moon bump, I have every right to say so because that's what my eyes are telling me what I'm looking at. Also, what my eyes tell me is that Meghan is so half-assed, she can't even help this woman put on this jacket properly and help her. Let's slow it down. You can see Meghan is impatient, clenching her jaw as this woman takes off the jewelry that she was just trying on to see how it would look with the outfit. All Meghan wants to do is put this jacket on so she could be free of holding it. Now, from what I can see from this angle, it does appear to me that Meghan is getting impatient with this woman and getting this jacket on. She clenches her jaw and then finally moves away, even though this woman doesn't have this jacket on properly. Doesn't even notice or care that the woman is struggling to put on this jacket, so you see the blonde move towards her to try and help her. Now, this next part, I don't think anyone has picked up on this interaction, or if they did, most likely Meghan had them pulled down. This is the only person that I'm aware of on record that was able to get up close and personal with this moon bump. And it wasn't by choice, and clearly Meghan was caught off guard. And I don't think Meghan liked it very much that this woman had her arm around her waist and was able to feel her back. Now, the other thing that's unusual here, since Meghan's excuse for putting her hand on her bump 24/7 is to protect it, the one moment where Meghan needed to put her hand on her bump, she didn't. As you can see, this woman, she brings her closer to her and her belly knocks into this woman's belly. And then, a couple seconds later, she then puts her hand on her bump. I would think if she truly was instinctually protecting a child, that hand would have been on that belly as the woman was pulling her near. That would have been an instinct, in my opinion. In my opinion, it looks like Meghan was quick to push this woman off of her. And I think that this woman felt something that didn't appear to be natural. Hence the reason why she's looking down and follows Meghan's bump as she moves around her. And immediately you see Meghan close off by folding her arms, almost as if she's guarding something.
We have tights here. We have tights here.
Could this be another reason why this video was buried? Who knew Archie was like an accordion where he contracts and he can expand? Contract, expand, contract, expand. Anyhow, that's just my opinion that I'm entitled to on a clip that had been buried, or at least made to be buried, but now has resurfaced so we can all enjoy. You see, what Meghan and Harry don't understand is why we do what we do. It's because we don't want to live in a society where people like that are telling us what to do and how to live, as well as what we can say and what we can think. And the number one way that Meghan and Harry see for their critics to stop is to deprive them of any kind of living or earning as a result of having wrongthink or exposing the truth.
Sort of the impact that social media has on young women. But how does that, you think, impact the sort of larger issue?
The entire environment of social media, not just social media in a broader sense as well. I think there is really legitimate media, but at the moment you see, in many ways, social media feeding into that. So it becomes a race because this clickbait culture has made it so that something that's salacious is more interesting and gets more pickup and can be monetized. Right. So that ends up being the thing that feeds the entire environment of the media.
But it can be harnessed for good. It can be harnessed in the other way. And so the question is, how can we very, very carefully curate some of those messages, especially for young people, in a way that will lead them, again, to be ambitious and aspire for that same kind of greatness.
Well, and also to
Stories are powerful.
Well, but also to be able on those platforms to have some way where you're incentivized to promote things, as you're saying, Melody, that are positive and good and true, right? But right now, if you're getting paid for the most clicks and you're getting more clicks when people are hate clicking on things, then without question, you are perpetuating a cycle. Especially in the entire period of lockdown, right? In lockdown, let's say someone before that had, 5 hours a week that they could invest into scrolling online. During lockdown, in the absence of being out of the house or being at work, maybe you're spending 50 hours online. You're becoming indoctrinated. You're becoming conditioned to be cruel. And there has to be a responsibility that lands somewhere, and that must be with the platforms with some,
That's a much larger conversation.
Such a fraud.